Certainly, I'm Frank Kelly. I'm the incumbent in District 3, and that's the seat that I'm seeking re-election in. That's a great question. Let me start out by saying how important it is, how important the school board and what the school board does for all residents of Bossier Parish. Whether you own property here for your residents, whether you own a business, whether you come here and spend money here, because it's such a large portion of the sales tax goes to the Bossier School Board. And so first of all, I think as taxpayers overall, generally we are overtaxed. When you combine the way you look at the federal, state, and local tax structures, then all the special taxes, I feel like we're overtaxed. So I think we have to be very careful when we go to the public for special bond issues. That's not to say we shouldn't do that when it's required, but we should use fiscal constraint. Now, in the context of overtaxation, how do you convince the public to vote for something that we as the school board think is necessary? We do that through education. We do that through co-opting. We do that through communicating with the stakeholders. And so it's important to go out to groups such as the Chamber, anyone that has a vested interest, and I've already said everyone should have a vested interest in this. And so to the extent that we can get out and communicate with the public, if we've got a good argument, if our logic holds water, then they should see the wisdom of what we're asking. Well, I feel very strongly that government should be accountable to the people, and that includes the school board. And one of the important ways to prove its accountability is with transparency. Okay, we need to be transparent in what we do. We need to be transparent in the results that we get from testing, and a lot of that is put online by the state. But we just need to be upfront with our constituents, with our stakeholders. We have a great school district, and you, as being in the Chamber, you probably know as well as anyone, when people come to this area and compare both sides of the river, there are a lot of great things about being on the Bossier side. From law enforcement, people always look at the school system, and we compare favorably to our neighbors to the west. Okay, we're doing a great job, and as the incumbent, like I said, I've been on the board for about a year, and part of my privilege and frankly part of my responsibility has been to go out to all the departments of the school board. I've done that. I've gone to the finance department, to maintenance, to textbooks, to every place in the school system. I've been there. But I first wanted to say how great we are. And when I go out everywhere, I hear this so many times, and it's so encouraging, and it's so great for our system. I hear people say to me, "I love my job," and that's important. And you can't fake that, and you can't substitute for that in a school system. And what that means is that it's a great benefit for our kids. Now, the opportunities and the challenges that we have as a school system, I think the two biggest problems that our school system has are politics and finances. Okay, and what I mean is that, in my opinion, the education of our children has been sacrificed on the altar of political expediency. When you talk about the things that the governor's done, the state superintendent, the Bossier board, and even the legislature, okay, it's shameful the way they've mismanaged education in this state. And I think that's our biggest problem. That is compounded by what I can group as unfunded requirements. In other words, when the legislature imposes a requirement on the school system that costs us money, but they don't give us extra money for that. And the biggest example is what's called the unfunded accrued liability. The state has a responsibility to pay for the employees' retirement system, the teachers' retirement system. So what the state has done is they've taken their responsibility to pay for that and they've pushed it down to the parishes. And that's a huge problem for us. Now, our opportunity and what we've excelled in so far is to insulate the students and the parents from the chaos that the state provides to us. And so I feel like the superintendent, the administration has done a great job of doing that and providing great education for our kids. What you can know is what you can see and measure. Okay, and so what I can do is I can drive around my district, which I do, and I see that I have a lot of subdivisions. And it seems like every time I go down a road, there's a new subdivision popping up or a new home being built. And so what we see is growth. Okay, and what the voters did in 2012 is pass the $210 million bond for school construction, and you all have seen the plans, and you have been at the groundbreakings for some of these events, and so we actually need to stay abreast of the growth, and so that we don't end up in a situation of reacting. Okay, we need to be prospective and plan for things instead of being catching up and reacting. So the way I say it is, we need to keep up and not catch up. Takes me back to the prior question about opportunities and challenges in the school system. I talked about how the school system has insulated, to the extent possible, the parents and the students from these big changes associated with Common Core. And so it's the state's responsibility to develop the curriculum or the curricula and hand it down to the school systems. The state failed in that responsibility, so Bossier Parish had to do that. And so through a Herculean effort, the staff, the leadership came together and they got that accomplished in a way that might have seemed transparent to the parents and the students. And so that was terrific. I think that one of the reasons I wanted to come to the school board, I mean, I'm motivated to do what's best for the kids. The substance of education, the most important component of education for me is what happens between the teacher and the child. Okay, and to me that's where we should focus our resources. Any great enterprise should examine what it does, account for what it does well, and then ask itself, what can we do better? Okay, and I do think we have some opportunities for improving in some certain areas. And that's one of the things that I want to do as a board member. I've started to try to do as a board member. Taking care of my district, I do that through involvement in the schools. I stay in touch with the schools, the principals, and I'm on campus fairly often. I hold advisory groups. I've held advisory groups during the past year for both teachers and a separate group for parents. And what I do in those advisory groups is I brief either the parent or the teacher group about what the school board is doing. Things like the pay raise that we did earlier this year, things like groundbreakings, things like progress on the construction of schools adjacent to their neighborhoods, things like that. So first of all is I brief them on what the school board's doing, and secondly I solicit their feedback. It's very important for us to hear what the parents are thinking. It's important for us to hear what the teachers are thinking, lest we on the board think we know it all, because we just don't always consider all the things that parents and teachers can provide to us. That's a great question. That's the million-dollar question. And I'll tell you that First of all, there are people that say that performance should not be measured. That's false. We don't accept that in any other part of our life. We take a test to get our driver's license. But I do think that teachers should be, their performance should be measured. And I think that it should be associated with incentives or remuneration. I think that recently the board voted on teacher pay, and it included a component which changed the performance incentive for the highly effective. The difference between the effective and the highly effective used to used to be several $100s. Mm-hmm. I was disappointed when the board changed that to make it a $100 difference between effective and highly effective. And to me, it removed any extra incentive. I said before that I think teacher evaluation should somehow be tied to student performance, student achievement. That is really difficult because students differ. Okay, you have the high achieving students, you have the students at the other end of the spectrum, and so I think there's good reason for a pre-test, post-test evaluation methodology. You also have the issues associated with socioeconomics. I was having a conversation with one of the principals in our school district, and we were talking about school performance scores, and I said, you know, talk to me about some of the strategies you have for improving performance. And I said, what is it that we can do? What was it that I could do to help you improve your school scores? And he said, well, you could build a subdivision here, $400,000 homes, put about 300 homes in there that cost $400,000 each. And he was obviously speaking about, you know, the demographics, and it's just harder for a teacher working in some of the in some areas to have the same result as teachers working in a more affluent area. It's just how it is. One of the teachers summed it up this way. It was on her 20th anniversary of teaching. She said, the kids that come to school, wait a minute, she said it this way, the kids that are loved at home come to school to learn. Kids that aren't loved at home come to school to get loved. And that makes a big difference in the way that you can teach them. That's a great question, and I don't know the complete answer to that question. But what I know is that as a system, we need to work on, and maybe the system already knows the answer. I, as a school board member, don't yet know that answer. But I do know that it's important to evaluate the teachers. I know that the evaluation process is in place. Both the principals and the assistant principals are doing those evaluations, and I'll have to learn more about that to give you a good answer on that. Well, I think that the way to balance that is to identify your objective in using the instrument, the evaluation instrument. And so there's a danger of taking it too far and making it too punitive. Okay, and if you really look at it as a training opportunity and put the emphasis there, I think that's the key. And again, it gets back to what is the most important component in education, and to me that's what happens between the teacher and the child. And then if a teacher is not achieving their best in the classroom, what can we do to help him or her? And that's where we need to focus resources. So I think the emphasis is on training and not on the other side, more anything that might be punitive. I don't know. I don't know what the charter accountability standard is, but let me just say in general about charter schools. There are some people in the district who are very much opposed to charter schools. My belief is that, we have a $202 million budget this year. We're resourced in a tremendous way, and we ought to be able to compete, and we shouldn't be afraid of charter schools. We shouldn't be afraid of someone coming in and competing with us. We should be able to compete favorably against anyone. Now, with respect to the charter schools, I am opposed to the private school model that allows a charter school to come into an area, a parish, to buy real estate buildings with taxpayer dollars. Okay, it's a privately held company. They buy the land and they build the buildings with taxpayer dollars, and then if the school closes in 3 or 5 years, then they're allowed to sell the building or sell the land and keep the profit. I'm very much opposed to that. Here's how I operate as a school board member. First of all, I'm a Christian. I'm a committed Christian, and I try to live my life that way. And having seen what happened with the Bossier Parish Sheriff, and the way the feds came in and said you cannot pray in your program, and the sheriff said no thank you, you just keep your money, it made me think that, well, I had to ask myself, is that going to happen more or is that going to happen less? And I believe that the way the federal government is headed now, the answer is that's going to happen more. And so, as a Christian, I wanted to be involved. I think that Christians need to be in the public square where the decisions are made and where the conversations are held. Now, how do I operate as a school board member? First of all, I do as much research as I can. I try to research every issue. I seek the opinions of the stakeholders, and I could name people who, Red River United, the Bus Drivers Association. I don't always agree with them, but we always can have a conversation. So I seek the input from the stakeholders. I always want to hear the opposing view. I don't want to formulate my opinion or cast my vote without hearing what the other side would say. Why are they holding the position that they hold, the view that they hold? And so that's what I try to do, is to listen to people that have a vested interest to make the best decision possible. But to build consensus, what I do is I try to communicate. And like I said, I've been out there talking to stakeholders. I've talked to parents and parent groups. I've talked to the teachers. I've talked to the unions. I've been out and I've talked to some of the churches in the area. I mean, what I try to do is to go out and be available. I don't physically bring anybody with me. I mean, I just try to do the research and canvass the stakeholders and try to understand what they're thinking. Okay, the Common Core question. All right, here's the thing about Common Core. In a word, I'm opposed to Common Core for these reasons. Let me talk about it. Louisiana had to do something. Louisiana was 49th in the country in in education. We had to do something. Okay, I would have preferred to develop the standards locally. Okay, and it could be done, and you could even incorporate some of the Common Core standards into the local standards. So the Common Core standards are available for review on the Bossier Parish website. It's a 66-page document. It's slick. It explains what they're trying to do. I'm opposed to the federalized aspect of it. I just think that we're better off developing these standards ourselves based on our own values and our own beliefs. And the thing about, I have a military background. In the Army, they say, they'll issue things to the troops, and they'll say one size fits all. Well, if you've been in the Army and if you've been on the receiving end of that issue, what that really means is one size fits none, because it's not customized. And so our curriculum, our education system should be customized to the needs of our parish, in my opinion. One of the big problems with Common Core is that it was developed with business, with educators, but there's a key group that was omitted in the formulation of Common Core, and that's the parents. And where are you hearing the pushback now? You know, the most I hear is from the parents. I mean, they call me up. They're emailing me at 11 o'clock at night. Well, let me just add one more thing. Here's what I would have done. The rollout of Common Core was fundamentally flawed. And to me, it seemed like the schedule was based on an election cycle, not on what's best for our kids. So if I was going to roll out Common Core or any new educational standards, what I would have done is I would have developed the standards and say, okay, we're going to do this over a 13-year period. We're going to start with kindergarten, okay, and this is the kindergarten class, and if we get this right, we're going to do it right. We do the kindergartners. The next year, we do first grade and kindergartners. Next year, and so everybody knows this wave is coming, and so everybody has a chance to prepare. And to impose this on a system at the drop of a hat with very little notice, in my opinion, was ill-conceived. I would say that, yeah, in general, you know, I'm asking the voters of District 3 to rehire me. I've been working for them for the last year, and I would say there are a couple things that they could look at that would demonstrate that I've been doing a good job for them. Fiscal constraint. I don't believe we should spend money just because we have it there. I think we should spend every tax dollar like it was earned by the sweat of someone's brow. Just because it's there, we shouldn't spend it. I think that we should look at checks and balances. The school board serves as the only check and balance of the superintendent and the administration. We should look at how, the voters should look at how the candidates perform that function of checks and balances. How often is a candidate opposing the administration? Look, my job on the school board is to make the school system as good as possible to help them achieve their objectives. And sometimes that means taking an opposing view to what they're proposing. So I've done that. And then accountability. You know, we had an issue with school board members not attending school board meetings. We had excessive absences. The prior board didn't address it. I was seated on the board in November. By January, I figured out people weren't showing up at meetings, and I asked the question, what are we doing about this? How long has this been going on? It has been going on for a while. The board had not addressed it. I led the initiative, and it's back to my point about the board being accountable to the taxpayers, to the voters. I led the initiative to impose penalties, so when board members have excessive absences, they get the maximum fine.